A fortune up for grabs, an unlikely heir from a small town, and lots of people scheming against him. All of this can only mean one thing. We're comparing Mr. Deeds Goes to Town and Mr. Deeds on this episode of Retro vs. Remake.
Reggie Parker.
And I'm Dan Bulick. Welcome to another episode of Retro vs. Remake. This is the series where we compare movies and their remakes. Join us as we answer the question, should this remake exist? Today's films are Mr. Deeds Goes to Town and Mr. Deeds. Getting right into it, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town was made in 1936, starring Gary Cooper, Jean Arthur, Lionel Stander, Douglas Dumbrell, Raymond Walburn, and H.B. Warner. Directed by Frank Capra, screenplay by Robert Riskin, and music by Howard Jackson. Uncredited. Couldn't find him on Wikipedia. Had to go to IMDb. Mr. Deeds 2000, starring Adam Sandler, Winona Ryder, Peter Gallagher, Jared Harris, Alan Covert, Eric Avari, John Turturro, with Steve Buscemi and Rob Schneider, of course. Directed by Stephen Brill, screenplay by Tim Hurley, and music by Teddy Castellucci. Alright, Reggie, what is your first experience with either film?
Well, funny enough, this is a longer story than it needs to be. I've watched both
Just
these...
like the first movie, right?
So I watched both of these films at some point, I think, within the last 2 years, because I thought we were watching this when we watched The Manchurian Candidate, and I realized I just mentioned Mr. Deeds and we were watching a different movie. But before that, I'd seen, the remake at some point because, Adam Sandler was a pretty popular comedic actor. I didn't even know that there was an original, so for this podcast this time and the first time, this is my, my first experience with the first film.
Yeah. I had never seen the original. I wasn't really familiar with it, but I had seen the remake. Actually saw it in theaters.
Okay, nice.
With a bunch of friends, and it was pretty empty, that theater, but somehow still this movie made a lot of money.
Yeah.
This was kind of around the time, I guess, I started really getting out of the Adam Sandler films. So
this is where you can kind of start making your descent.
Yeah. So, and then I guess I probably saw it on TV maybe a couple times. I was surprised how much I kind of remembered from rewatching it for this series, but we'll obviously get into that. These movies are very similar, despite a very different ending. But before we get into comparisons, let's go over a brief synopsis. A rich tycoon dies with no apparent heir. A man by the name of Cedar tries to find out who will inherit the money. Turns out the closest heir is a grandnephew by the name of Longfellow Deeds from a small town of Mandrake Falls. Cedar and company meet with Deeds to tell him the news. Deeds is a peculiar character who likes making greeting cards, firefighting, and doesn't seem to care about his large inheritance. Deeds does decide to go with them to New York to learn more about money and business of his great uncle. Meanwhile, everyone wants to know about this heir. Beat reporter Babe Bennett decides to go undercover. She pulls the damsel in distress act and gets close to Deeds. She calls herself Miss Dawson and also claims to be from a small town. Deeds falls for her hard. At first, Dawson just hangs around with Deeds for her stories, but eventually she starts to like him too. Just when things seem to be going well, Deeds learns the truth about Miss Dawson. Meanwhile, Mr. Cedar has been up to no good. He plans to make money for himself, which will cause lots of people to lose their jobs. But he needs to get rid of Deeds first. Both movies have very different endings, but ultimately, Deeds and Miss Dawson, or Babe, finally get back together, and Deeds has his money and is able to save people's jobs. Kind of, something like that.
More or less, yeah.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
It's in the title, your main character is Mr. Deeds, Longfellow Deeds in this scenario. You've got like the same basic plot point that he inherited money. I guess we could talk about briefly talk about who they inherited money from, and I think that'll help us get into this character portrayal of Longfellow Deeds.
Sure. We have Martin Semple in the original, and then Preston Blake in the remake.
Want me to wet the leaves on your ficus tree, Presto?
Yes. Yes. Yes!
In the original Martin Simple, who is he? Some guy, you know, they do the spinning newspaper trick. And, you know, everything you know about Martin Simple is in text, and it's really straightforward. Like, clearly he's some kind of New York socialite that had a lot of money. Mm-hmm. He's dead. Longfellow is the heir. In the remake, I do like that they built out sort of the backstory for the character, in this case, Preston Blake. And it's interesting, like, it's a media empire. He, like, climbs, like, Everest or something
Mount
like
Everest,
that. Yeah. Freezes to death. And, like, they play that back to, like, comedic effect. And I think that even that right there starts to show you that the two movies have different... They were both comedic, but the remake is far more leaning into that comedy.
Yeah. A lot more slapsticky, too.
Yeah, definitely. Which then... Now that you have that framework, can take you into Longfellow Deeds himself. In the original, Longfellow Deeds is played by Gary Cooper.
It's like I'm out in a big boat and I see one fellow in a rowboat who's tired of rowing and wants a free ride, and another fellow who's drowning. Who would you expect me to rescue, Mr. Cedar, who's just tired of rowing and wants a free ride, or those men out there who are drowning?
And in the remake, it's Adam Sandler.
You gonna change my socks for me? You don't gotta do that. Come on, stand up.
Thank you, sir.
Besides, you don't want to have to touch my right foot. I got wicked bad frostbite when I was in the Scouts. Check it out.
Cooper.
He's a tall fella.
Tall drink of water, that Gary Cooper. Real handsome bastard. What I find interesting about the Gary Cooper portrayal is, yes, he is quirky, but I think they kind of bring it up in the trial, like his kind of highs and lows, sort of. It's kind of hard to tell at times where he stands, because like sometimes he is like this kind of like oafish character, and there are other times where he's like deadly serious, you know. And I found that like I did appreciate a lot of this sort of common sense wisdom that was coming from this character at times, like when they were talking about the opera and they're like, oh, we're losing money. It's like, well, why? like I guess we can start in Mandrake Falls, really. Like, that small town is so kind of out there. Like, the first character you meet is sort of like that guy working at the train station is like picking up boxes and he can't remember anyone's name.
Right.
And like you get this idea that like, okay, Mandrake Falls is a strange small town, and this Deeds guy has like this reputation in this strange place. In your first intro to him, he's like immediately playing the tuba, like,
yeah,
which happens way too much in that movie, if you ask me.
About my playing the tuba. Seems like a lot of fuss has been made about that.
For you, what was kind of like your original read on this Gary Cooper portrayal?
I don't know. He seems like a kind of a boring guy to me, honestly. Yeah, he likes the tuba and he likes poetry and stuff, but like he didn't like show emotion at all.
No.
Like, I know the whole shtick of, you know, Mr. Deeds is like, here's your money, and it's like, I don't really care about it, but like he didn't seem to care about like much. Like, even stuff like he cared about, like it was like you said, he was really hard to read.
Right.
Like, okay, he likes the tuba, and every time like a fire truck went by, he was like a little puppy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's that fire truck? I'm gonna see the fire truck. But it's really kind of hard to just know, like, I don't know, kind of just like him in general.
Yeah, it swings wildly, right? Because there are times where you know, like I would say when he's serious, like that the meeting with the opera people where he's like, no, you're either your ticket prices are off or you're doing something that's like, obviously this business isn't working, and he just says it so matter-of-factly. And he has moments like that, like with the butler. He's like, hey, I don't need you to hold my pants. Like, when he has those moments, he feels like this really serious kind of guy. And though he's odd to everyone else, they're like, well, why wouldn't you want $20 million in this case versus the $40 billion in the remake?
Give me that $40 billion. Oh,
yeah,
man.
It's kind of crazy. But for him to have these moments where he is basically like a Gary Cooper type, like a tall guy, was like, hey, look, I don't like all these frills and stuff like that. But then to your point, then the next scene is like, ooh, fire truck. Wow. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah. It's just really hard to read. And then a lot of violent outbursts.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, seemingly to me, like, completely unprovoked.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sometimes it's just physical violence, so sometimes he just yells. I think there's one time when like a server was trying to like help him, and they just straight up, flat out yelled at him.
What do you mean by coming in here when I'm playing?
But she's on the telephone, sir.
Get out. The evil finger's on you.
The finger, sir.
Get out!
Yes, sir.
And then like told him to get out, and then he heard an echo, and then was like completely distracted by it. He is like very childlike, just gets like distracted by like bells and whistles, and it just a really hard character to read.
Yeah, yeah. But like Adam Sandler is far more consistent.
Yeah.
With his portrayal, like it's like I like elements of when Gary Cooper is kind of serious. I think that like the wisdom of the Mr. Deeds comes across in some, like, sometimes in some scenes with him, but like because he fluctuates so wildly, it's like, all right. First, like Adam Sandler, who's like kind of consistently, as Adam Sandler does, like a man child.
Right.
He's I don't know, like even like tonally when you first get to Mandrake's Falls, because you already had the Preston Blake thing where he like freezes to death. That's a funny beat. They get to Mandrake Falls, and it's already infinitely a better scene because the guy who's just picking up boxes and forgetting that he just had a conversation with you. I didn't really get that.
Yeah.
I thought it was like weird take. Like I guess it showed that people in this town are aloof, but I don't know. Because it's a longer movie, they spend a lot of time with this guy. And at least the character in the remake, who's like the pizza delivery guy, he's not there. Like I said, I think he's from Grandma's Boy.
He is in Grandma's Boy.
Yeah.
He's in the basement that he gets high and all.
Yeah.
He has a monkey.
Yeah. Chief. But like, he does kind of the same thing, which like he knows where Deeds is, but he doesn't quite take them to Deeds right away because like they didn't ask, right? So it's the same beat, which is so much funnier because like he's clearly like he called out sick and all this stuff. Like it similar intro, funnier, and the tone is just like it's there. So that when Adam Sandler comes in the scene, we pick right up with that tone, with how he's interacting with everyone in town.
Yeah, and just in general, the comedy is easier to follow in the remake for sure. That 1930s comedy, it's very subtle and underplayed. And it's I don't even know like how to gauge it. It's sort of the way people are acting. It's sort of the reactions to the way they're reacting, but it's so I don't know, just not obvious in the way that you think of a comedy. Like it's almost like the remake is a comedy, while the original is like a regular film with some comedic elements thrown in occasionally.
I would say so because, funny enough, like both films have like the framework is the same. Like the beats are actually kind of consistent between the two films, but because the original is a little bit longer and because they don't stick with that comedic tone, it's hard to tell when things are like, am I supposed to laugh here or like, am I supposed to take this guy seriously?
Yeah.
You know? Now that I'm thinking about it, it is really confusing.
It really is because like you think someone's being funny, but they're just being a jerk, and then like you think Deeds is being funny, but no, he's actually getting mad. Right. So I'm not supposed to laugh at this. I'm supposed to be on his side, but he's going about it in a way that would be perceived as funny today. So it definitely sort of clashes with our perception of comedy as we see it now in films.
Right.
So it's a little tough to follow in that way.
Right. Because like in the original, when Deeds is violent, like before they kind of make it funny, like maybe he's just a violent guy.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Like maybe just kicking ass, because like.
And then he talks about how he wants to like hurt people. It's
like,
man, this is this troubled individual.
Really need help, man. You know. But I don't know. I think that the original tries to play up these quirks that like aren't that quirky. Like to me, a guy that likes to play tuba is like, why? I get it. Like not everyone plays the tuba, but like, so what? Like he's at home, he's playing the tuba.
Yeah,
he plays tuba in the town band. Like, is it weird to play tuba in your like pretty big band? Like it's not like he's by himself. Like I could see if no one else played tuba, if he was in the middle of the town square. It's like okay, that's funny, but like when you're in the full orchestra, it's like. Why is this funny? Yeah,
again, it's just that humor just not translating to today. He picks up the tuba and he plays it to think. Weird. Yeah. It's not that weird. It's really not.
Pretty fucking normal, man.
If he needs to hurt people to think, then that's a little weird.
Yeah. It's effectively to a certain extent the same movie, but like the tone has shifted.
Right.
I think I'm gonna be jumping around a little bit, but like for instance, in that scene where he's playing the tuba and they're ready to like leave the town to go back to New York, and Gary Cooper, they're like, well, where the hell is this guy? Well, the train's about to leave, and you see him playing. I was like, I thought that was funny. It's like, okay, here he is. He's playing in the band. He couldn't be bothered with this $20 million.
Look, what? That tuba player. Well, now I've seen everything.
That's funny, but like again, it's subtle, right? It's not like laugh out loud funny.
Exactly.
You know, versus like in the remake, you know, showing solidarity with the town is more of like everyone gathered around while he does these kind of like cheesy poems. Yeah. Like, I think that it's a more personal, one-on-one kind of intro to Longfellow Deeds without getting too sucked up into everybody in town. Mm-hmm. And you know, Sandler gets to just show his personality versus Gary Cooper, who like far into the film we don't know what his personality is at all.
Yeah, like the brief interactions that Adam Sandler's character has with the townspeople, and then just the way they all like him, so really lets us know where he lies, and what kind of character he is. You don't really get that at all in the original film.
No, you get it.
You're following the attorneys really, and you're just sort of following their reactions to like how weird this town is and how weird this guy is. So you don't really get a sense of who Deeds really is because you're just seeing it through their sort of skewed prism. Right.
And, you know, I think that there are elements, because we'll talk about, like, there's literally a trial in the film. And, you know, we've talked about this sort of theme before, but, like, Gary Cooper's character, and so is Adam Sandler, but, like, Gary Cooper's character really feels like this fish out of water. He's a guy who, in his town, like, it's normal to behave like this. Mm-hmm. But in the big city, you know, people are movers and shakers. And like I said, I do like some elements of the more serious term because, like, I'm not a huge slapstick guy. Mm-hmm. But so, like, I like this idea of a person from a simple town imbuing wisdom on people who think they're smarter than him. But it's like, no, I'm smarter than you. Like, you're running an opera house into the ground. You're a law firm. He's like, I'd like to see the books before I sign anything. Mm-hmm. like when he does that, I think that works. But then in those elements, it's not a comedy. You know, it's like it's not funny. It's just like, all right, like there's a movie where you do that, where it's just you're not doing the punch out scenes, which I think are supposed to be played to last, but they're, like we mentioned, they're just violent. Like there's a movie where just like everyone thinks they're smarter than him. And he's subverting expectation and actually, like, you know, they say it at one point in the movie, you're the most sane person here, but, like, it feels like shoehorned in the way they filmed it.
Yeah, and again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but yeah, talking about that ending, it's one of those movies that kind of lectures you at the very end. Yeah. Because his lecture is perfect, you know, everything goes his way, but we'll definitely dive deeper into that. Just getting back to the violence of Mr. Deeds. Again, just in the different tones of the movie, like you just said, when we see Deeds fight for the first time in the original, we're not sure. Is this supposed to be a funny moment? What's going on? Because he's like, you know, he's with these poets that he admires. Yep. And he's been asking, like, at the restaurant, or like, are there any famous people here? He keeps asking him consistently. And then finally, like, a famous poet that he recognizes knows who he is, and he knows that Deeds has his fortune, so he calls him over. And then, Deeds reads his silly little greeting card poems, and, you know, he does get made fun of, ultimately. And then he says, like, you know, if Miss Dawson wasn't here, I'd knock your teeth out or something like that. And then she's like, go ahead. And he's like, yes, I get to be violent. So he punches a couple of guys, and then they just kind of leave, but it's done in a way that isn't really funny.
No, it's
If it weren't for Miss Dawson being here with me, I'd probably bump your heads together.
Oh, I don't mind.
He literally just punches these guys, and maybe in 1930, what, it was 36? Yeah, maybe in 1936, that's funny, like the fact that he actually punched him, but like, no, you're right, like at that point, I would still say, like, this movie doesn't read as a comedy. So like, all right.
Just these guys being a jerk to this guy who's from out of town, and he doesn't know how to retaliate, so he resorts to physical violence.
Mm-hmm. It's like again, like, because the movie plays in these tones, like the fact that he knows the poets, to me, again, it shows like this guy has like this level of like cognition,
Right.
That I will say like Adam Sandler's character does not appear to have.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
You know?
That's definitely fair.
And like I think that again, for me, I liked that about this Deeds. Like he felt like there was more to him.
Right.
but you know, again, I know we're gonna sound like we're beating a dead horse or feeding a horse donuts. But like, fucking pick one, man. Pick one. Like, are you the fire truck guy? Because like Adam Sandler's the fire truck guy.
Yeah,
he's the fire. Like, oh my god, it was a fire truck. I mean, that's a funny scene in the remake. But like, he knows the poets, he respects them, and like that moment, it feels actually really kind of tender in that moment. Like he feels very vulnerable because Gary Cooper's like, it's like, you know, I thought you were kind of like cool guys, and like, you know, you're just jerks. You know, you brought me over here to make fun of me, and like again, you get the same beat with Adam Sandler, but like it felt more almost like real in that moment because he knew who they were. Whereas like Adam Sandler was like, it's just kind of famous people.
Right.
He doesn't know who they are, but they're making fun of him, and you know, there's still the violence. Like,
but it's played to much more,
so much more,
especially because you have that opera guy who's just singing the whole time he's getting beat up. So you know, this is that slapstick humor that we sort of expect from an Adam Sandler movie. So you know, the violence isn't like horrid, like oh my god, he just assaulted 3 men in a restaurant. It's like no, this is all jokey violence. So you're able to kind of go with it.
Okay.
You're ridiculous.
As opposed to the original where you were like, oh man, what kind of guy is this?
And like in the original, like, you know, he punches people, and then there's that weird guy who's like, come on, belt me.
Yeah, punch me now.
Yeah, I like that. You know,
hurt me more, Snake.
Hurt me, Snake. Yeah, great reference. Great Fox. But yeah, no, I was getting that energy. I was like, dude, this guy is You're gonna hang out with this guy? You fucking nuts? Yeah, you're gonna get blackout drunk with that guy. Yeah, that's your choice. All right.
I know, especially if you've never drunk before.
Yeah. But like, see, like, what's again the tone shift between the two films. In the original film, you get this weird kind of beatnik, like, go back to nature. You know, don't wear clothes. Like, okay,
yeah,
what was that about? Whereas the remake is like, hey, it's freaking John McEnroe.
The bad boy of tennis.
Yeah. The wire work when like the cars coming out there where he just like jumps over them. Like,
that was ridiculous.
I don't know why that happened. But like,
it's like a cat, John McEnroe.
But like, you know, that's the difference. Like, there's this little piece of me, right? Because like I tend to be a more serious man, even though I like comedy. Like, I like this serious tone, but then like I don't know what to do with the hurt me Snake guy. I don't know what to do. like that guy is just so weird. Like I know what to do when I see Johnny McEnroe. He's like, I like your style.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well hell yeah, let's take the ride. And like between the two films, like because it's the 1930s, when they're talking about Mr. Deeds' sort of activities in the city, you're just reading like newspaper clippings.
Exactly.
There's like the remake, you're seeing like footage of like Johnny McEnroe like
throwing eggs at cars.
Like, I don't know, yeah. I like elements of the original scene, like tonally and like the respect and the poets. But then I was like, of course I like the remake better. Like I know I'm supposed to laugh. And then you get this cool celebrity cameo that like, you know, it's like it elevates that scene so much. I will say that Sandler is very much Sandler in this film. You know? And
it works, I guess, with the Deeds character. I mean, I know what I'm getting, I guess, with the Mr. Deeds in the remake, because it like the tone is set immediately when you see Preston Blake die on top of that mountain, and then you just see his dead corpse hugging the very peak of the mountain. You're like, okay, well, this is clearly a comedy.
They helicopter him out.
He's still holding on, right? So, like, by setting the tone immediately, you're able to go for those more absurd moments in the movie. They never have a moment like that in the original film. Granted, you know, it's a movie made in the 30s. They didn't really have to maybe establish those type of things, I guess for people to go for those rides. you know what you're getting with Adam Sandler. You're getting Adam Sandler in an Adam
Right.
Sandler movie, but you don't really know with Gary Cooper. I will give him that he is definitely sharper.
Yes, he's
and
sharper.
seems to have a little bit more agency.
Mhm.
There's the one scene where somebody's claiming to be the widow and
that was a great
has a
scene.
son, and then he's like, "Well, they want $7 million, but they'll settle for $1." He's like, "Well, you just get out of here, see?
Yeah.
Like nobody would settle for $1 if they can get $7. It's because there is no wife. I'm savvy to you.
Yeah.
You couldn't even pick up on that, Cedar. So he's definitely sharp, and he seems serious. So it's like when there's this comedy thrown in, it clashes.
Yeah, it totally clashes. Because like again, I think that's when the movie is strongest. When I've said it too many times already, but like when he's talking about the business failing, he's like, "Well, you're doing something wrong. Like you're not putting on the right types of shows." And I'm like, "Whoa, we just expect you to hand us money." He's like, "No, we're not doing that."
Yeah.
In that scene, I think the problem with those types of scenes though is like, who's this guy? Like the guy, he walks into the house like just like, I want $7 million. He's like, but I'll take $1 million. It's like, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? There's like loose ends that just don't go anywhere. Like we talked about Martin Simple, who we don't know who he is, but there's like two characters who aren't even worth mentioning really because they should be, but they're not. You've got like another potential heir to the Simple fortune and his wife. And the guy who, he looks like he's got money. He's like, whatever. My uncle hates me. And she's like, I told you to be nicer to him. and like, you see this guy come along and like, nothing.
Yeah, you think he could be like the antagonist, like the guy who's going to go head to head with Mr. Deeds to get that money, but he's so laissez-faire about it. He's like, he doesn't really care. It's more of his wife driving him on. And then eventually he does connect with Cedar, and that's kind of what drives Cedar to the trial thing, but it would have been much stronger had we focused on that character. But
if that guy was like, I don't know, feeding information to Cedar, like if something, or like pretending to be friends with Deeds, like something other than like, oh, I'm a character that happens to be kind of related and I have an interest, but I'm in the movie so infrequently that like, who cares? I would say, and again, tonally, where are we going with this, right? The scene with the farmer who comes into the house. Again, anyone can just walk into the Simple estate, no matter who you are. And the guy's there, and he's got a gun,
Right.
Like,
yeah. This guy's got a gun.
Yeah.
He's going to shoot.
He's going to shoot Mr. Deeds. And it's like, that's not funny. And like, then they kind of get into like, almost like the Great Depression.
Right.
And it's like, fire truck, Great Depression, starving people, an heir to an estate, doodling, like it.
Doodling.
We're just like
feeding donuts to horses.
Yeah, the horse thing was apparently a big deal. Yeah, like
that just reminded me of Half Baked.
Yeah.
Good thing that horse wasn't a diabetic.
That's true. Now the horse only wants to eat donuts. It's like, I doubt that.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll eat whatever you give it.
Yeah. But like it's almost like it's like one of those like jumbled like word puzzles. Like you could say a series of words that are related to this movie and they don't make sense. So I could say tuba, fighting, gun,
fire.
Yeah, and like it's all in there because it's a long movie. It's all in there, but like it's just mashed together in a really strange way, and it steps on Gary's performance because I keep saying, I think there's a movie where there's not the comedy, and it just it works. Also, the movie should be called Mr. Deeds Goes to the City. So I'll just help you out there. It goes to town,
right? New York town.
Yeah, New York town. Utica. It's like I know I'm harping on it. Like I don't want to harp on it, but like there is a film without the comedy that I think still works.
Right.
Adam Sandler, the comedy. I mean, we really haven't even gotten into Adam Sandler yet because there's so much we have to address with the original. Like, things happen in his remake that like are not in the original at all that add to the humor. He, for some reason, has a frostbitten foot.
Right, that's completely black.
Yeah, which is like, okay, that's kind of funny. They play to an end, it comes back in the ending.
Yeah, it does. Just grab it.
I know it's gross. Yeah. But like, we get to play off of like, again, something as simple as like his foot it doesn't make sense, but like, okay, his foot's frostbitten. And we get to play in that space a couple times. When he's violent, like we talked about. When the Babe Bennett character, who we'll talk about, is getting assaulted. And like, the way he beats up.
Right, just keep going.
Ow! What's your problem, pal? Come up here.
Like, you know that you can laugh here. You know you can laugh when you're in Mandrake Falls, when he's doing the greeting cards. Oh, they're cheesy. It's like, they don't really quite rhyme.
Yeah.
But like, everyone's having such a reaction. You're like, okay, like, he's a more simple kind of, I guess, man character, but, you know, his boyish kind of charm comes out of it. And it's just far, far more consistent. If you don't like that type of humor, then, you know, this isn't the movie for you. But, like, at least the movie set the tone, said this is what you're in for, and they don't really deviate from that tone throughout.
Setting the tone with the adventures of President Blake.
Yes.
You know, that you know what kind of movie you're going to get. If you watch the movie and then you're like, okay, there's a dead guy on top of the mountain, and they're showing it on Times Squares, and they're showing him being airlifted, you know right then if you're going to want to watch the rest of that movie.
Right. When you have something like the, I guess there was a payoff for the fire engine in the original, because I guess he's riding it, but like, how do you catch it? You know,
Maybe they were at traffic.
maybe. But like, you get this pretty elaborate scene in the remake with the house on fire, and he's climbing the building, and someone makes a reference. Like, it's really funny.
Calm down. Calm down.
Kitties, come
Everything's gonna be all right.
Okay, but I'm not leaving without me kitties.
How many do you got?
7.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he's like Spider-Man climbing up the building. And, you know, it's a funny scene, and then they revisit it later when the media spins it, and it's funny when they do that too.
Yes.
He turned his sights on Miss Keeling herself.
No! My God!
Yeah. You get some really funny. You get a really funny scene from that Babe Bennett. It's like, oh, you know, fire turns me on. Unfortunately, like, we're gonna kind of just keep dancing around tone if we don't talk about Babe Bennett. So it might be a good idea to bring her in.
Yeah. So we have Jean Arthur as Louise Babe Bennett / Mary Dawson.
Leave 4 columns open on the front page tomorrow.
And then Winona Ryder as Babe Bennett / Pam Dawson.
Fire excites me.
Knock yourself out.
Slight name change.
Yes.
Don't know why, but sure.
Yeah. I think that, unfortunately, when we talk about films from this era, we always end up kind of saying the same thing about the lead actress, and it's effectively she's window dressing. There are scenes where she gets to like have an effect more towards the end of the film, but gee, she just feels so bad. He's just such a nice guy, and like I don't know. They like I always say, they put the Vaseline on the camera, and she. You know, they have that, like, Swanee Lake moment, which, you know. So, I mean, we're talking classic Hollywood starlet. She's a blonde. You get, again, in both films, she's a woman in distress because, like, Deeds in both films has this, like, idea of, like, oh, when I meet a woman, I want to be able to, like, help her out. Like, woman in distress has like a connotation around that time period, you know. So I thought it was kind of strange that was the the wording there. I know that from like some Cher song. Like, it basically could be like a woman that's like, pregnant, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, from a Cher song.
Yeah, Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. Yeah, whatever. That doesn't matter. The point is, you know, so like when they first meet. This Babe Bennett, she does classic 30s fainting spell. And that's how they meet, and they go out to meet the poets like you were talking about, and stuff like that. Unfortunately, there's just not much to her because there's not much to do. She's a single woman in her 30s, which means she should probably get attached to some sort of man soon. I do appreciate that they let her kind of act in the trial that we're going to talk about, but Winona Ryder has a lot more going on for herself.
Yeah, just I guess capping off Jean Arthur's performance. Like, her motivation is just like to get a month off of work.
Yeah.
She does her job pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just eventually decides she changes her mind because she likes Deeds. And then, like you keep saying, like, she does kind of shine a little bit more at that trial because her actions do have consequences there. But, yeah, just pretty by the books female love interest of the time. It doesn't really bring much.
And, you know, it's completely just more a sign of the times than, like, the actress's ability. You get that really, like I mentioned, you get that really long Swanee Lake sequence.
Which, like, you couldn't find anything better to play. Like, she was playing, like, some piece of metal.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, man.
Yeah. You gotta sit through that. Like, that, maybe that's comedic. Maybe that's funny.
So, if you like that song, you get to hear it not once, but twice.
Yes. With a fake tuba.
Fake tuba and then something representing percussion.
Yeah. I will say this too, that I do think, maybe because of the runtime, it feels like her progression to liking Deeds felt a little more natural to me, even though it's a 30s film. Like, I think the Winona Ryder character, the way we get into her and the way we get to her liking Deeds, felt like, okay, we got to check off that box a little bit. So I'll give Jean Arthur that I could see why she likes this guy, and I think it is because Cooper does have those serious elements, you know? Like, he is, quote-unquote, the sanest man in the room. So, like, I understand that versus, like, the remake. I guess he's sweet, but, like, he's really, really dumb.
But he's also a hero.
That's true. He's a hero.
That's sort of what I think.
That's what turns it.
Yeah, that's what turned her. That's what she liked.
Yeah.
So let's get into Winona Ryder's Babe Bennett / Pam Dawson. So she gets a lot more to do.
Yep.
She has a lot more comedic beats herself.
Yep.
In this, she doesn't have like a reason to do it necessarily. She's just she seems kind of bad at her job a little bit. Like she's overpaid, and she doesn't have a lead on the story at all. She actually only gets information on another reporter who actually knows all the details of like what Deeds likes, where you can meet him, and how we can get in with him. And she just happens to be a female, so she's able to, sneak in. And her sort of comedic beat is just the amount of lies she keeps on making of her backstory of Winchesterton Fieldville.
Winchesterton Fieldville. Was it Iowa or something?
Yeah. And then she just keeps making up stuff, and she's often quoting Catcher in the Rye, which I appreciated because I actually just reread that.
Cool.
So that was the fun little thing for me. It's like, I know these characters.
I love all the literary references in and then I fill out a Boo Radley stream.
Yeah.
Like,
I had to go see Dr. Pepper. It's just making up all these things on the fly. Not anywhere near like Kaiser Soze level. Right. So, and Winona Ryder does really well with it.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting about her journey, because like Jean Arthur, she's doing a bad thing, per se, but like it doesn't feel as almost like blatant as Winona Ryder, because like her lies are so extreme, and like you do have that beat, like you're saying at the TV company that they work for, you get that beat where she's like, "Oh, please, you got to give me this story, or you might fire me." And it's like she doesn't need the story. She's the highest paid person in the office, like that. Like that's funny. So like to me, there's like this somewhat moral bankruptcy that she's starting from, and I think that it's actually kind of impressive that she starts as like what could be a really unlikable character and like kind of works her way into being the love interest that she ends up being in the film,
and ultimately the hero.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. But like again, she's very good in this role because she is so funny with how she's like doing the lies. How she's reacting, like when they do go to Winchestertonville, like my daddy built this house 6 years ago.
Your daddy's a liar.
Like we don't have those moments where Jean Arthur we're like, I'm going to quote this Jean Arthur line.
Yeah, I don't really have any quotable moments with her.
I got Swanee Lake. That's all I got. But like, it's just so like when she's on screen with Deeds, it actually is really funny. Like we mentioned, like part of it in the original, like Jean Arthur just kind of faints just to faint. In this remake, she's been like attacked. Right. You know, they do this fake attack, and like Deeds just wails.
Yeah. Like Batman in the trailer, just keep wailing on him, throwing trash cans at him. The guy's just like, the guy that like pretty much helped Bennett get where she is, like, because he got all the information for her, and then she's just like, I'm sorry, I don't know. And even later at dinner, she's like, oh man, I hope that mugger made it home safe.
It's just so much funnier when those two are in the scene. And like I said, the fire truck scene, I found it very funny because like she's wearing like a hidden camera in her blouse, and there's a scene where the fire people look over because she's trying to get the best angle, and she's like got her she's got her tits out, and like, yeah, fire excites me, and I was like, that's a really funny beat, and she just has so many of those in this film.
Yeah, and it's slightly different too, sort of going on that fire story, because we see him be heroic and like save all the cats, and to comedic effect. Like every time the cat would like bounce out of the safety net, and it would just like land in some absurd place. It's just more absurd than the next. And he's a hero, and he's able to save the lady too. And then it's not her story that sort of brings Deeds down. It's the way it's spun by her editor. So he's made more of a villain, and then like she was trying to, paint him in a good light, a positive way.
Right.
She never really does that in the original. That's not done to her. Her story's not twisted in the original film.
It's interesting, right? Because like Babe Bennett in the remake is, almost, you could almost throw her in like an antagonist category. And like when that heroic thing happens, that is the turn for her. The way the story spun is so negative. She's like, well, what the hell? Like, it's a better story to her. They're like, he's a hero. But they're trying to keep this narrative like, this dumb guy from out of town. And it begins
cats and trying to
assault. That was it's so...
I think it's like it was funny because they used that footage and they threw in the sound effects, the sound effects of the cats making splatter, the sound effects of like Adam Sandler just making like heavy breathing noises. It was so ridiculous.
It's such a ridiculous scene. No. It's really funny, and like it's kind of like an indictment on the media in a certain extent. But like, that is the turn, and that's where Babe Bennett starts to like fight back from being like I said, more not villainous, but more like villain-like, and more in the category of a good guy. When we get an arc where, like you mentioned, she kind of saves the day in a certain capacity, which we'll talk about. In the original, it's just kind of like, I've been hanging out with him, he's doing nicer things. And then eventually I realized, like, oh man, like, he's a swell guy. Doesn't really stop her from writing more stories. Doesn't really stop her. Like, the comedy, like, in the remake, doing the fire truck and, like, the framing him to be, like, this, like, horrendous human being is funny. In the original, like, I don't get why, like, the Cinderella Man is funny. Like, they even have to explain to Gary Cooper's like, why are they calling you the Cinderella Man? And they're like, because. It's like, really, guys? That's the best you got? You have to guess. It's like, I guess that'd be funny to a 1930s audience. So, like, a guy coming into town being called the Cinderella Man, I guess.
Cinderella Man. That's sensational, babe. Sensational.
I was actually looking it up. So we know Cinderella mostly from, like, the movie, the old animated film. So this movie came out in 1936. Cinderella didn't come out in animated form until 1950.
That's true.
So it predates Cinderella quite a bit. So you would have to just know the story.
And if you ever read those old, like, Grimm's fairy tales and stuff like that, it's actually pretty dark.
Yeah, they always have dark endings. Like, Disney always gives it a happy ending, but not in those old stories,
So, like, and there was that boxer, too. I don't know what year that was.
Yeah, with Russell Crowe movie, Cinderella. I was like, that's a good movie. They keep talking about this good movie.
So it's like, they're making fun of him by calling him Cinderella Man. I was like, kind of. Like, dude, you're a guy from no means who comes across money. Like, I guess they're making fun of you, but, like, he was giving them reasons to kind of go after him to a certain extent because he's punching everybody around town. Sandler is like actively being heroic and is getting the short end of the stick. And the remake handles that juxtaposition so much better. And like I said, because we still get to stick in that comedic standpoint. We get to elevate Mr. Longfellow, Sandler's Longfellow in this case, and we get to elevate Babe Bennett, and it starts to kind of like bring that arc into like our third act. It's a really clean transition.
And it paints our villains out more clearly too.
Oh yeah, we know who our villains are. It is going to be a while before you know who your villains are in the original. There's more than you would expect, and they come from places you're not expecting.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah. Trial of the century. But yeah, I also enjoy Winona Ryder's stuff, and I think she's really good here. So, like, I know we kind of compare things on this show. For me, just put them together, the Adam Sandler Winona Ryder combination is stronger. This is going to sound weird. I slightly prefer at times Gary Cooper's Deeds because I do like someone that like has agency.
Right.
But like the combination of him and Jean Arthur, like the remake's kind of running away with that. Like I said, Adam Sandler's performance, he gets the comedy, but he also gets the tender moments. Like when he's getting made fun of, he looks just as sad as Gary Cooper does. So like he's doing his job really well, and I think those two just have really good chemistry in this film.
Yeah, I just overall found Gary Cooper and Jean Arthur boring.
Yeah,
I was
I
was pretty bored to tears. Like we keep saying, it is a longer film, so we actually probably do spend more time with them, but they are not interesting characters at all. I know there's not a lot to do in the 30s, but man, it's just like I don't know. I couldn't grab onto anything. I didn't latch on.
And there are large stints of the movie where they're not even like talking to each other or doing anything together. Like we have the whole aside where when he decides to kind of get rid of his money, and it's just like Gene Arthur's not in that part at all.
Yeah,
like and he kind of catches up with her later. It just going from scene to scene doesn't feel smooth in the way that it does in this shorter runtime remake. Even though things are strange, like the frostbitten foot, like everything kind of serves a purpose and comes back in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. And you have whole ass characters in the original that like should be major characters that are like minor, like D-roll characters, and it's really confusing.
It very much is.
Want to talk about some dirty lawyers? Or
let's get to some dirty lawyers. So we got Cedar. We got a few Cedars in the original. It's again confusing. I guess we're going to focus just on the main one.
Sure.
Douglas Dumbrill as John Cedar.
You say the word, and we'll stop this yokel dead in his tracks.
And then we have Peter Gallagher in the remake as Chuck Cedar.
If I got Preston Blake to trust me with his company, I can get this moron to do the same. I mean, look at him.
So again, I'll just start with the original John Cedar. Like I said, he's part of a firm that's called like Cedar, and I don't know, like Burlington or something like that. Something weird that he was like, I need to figure out how to rhyme with that. When you hear an interesting name, you always try to rhyme. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so boring. Yeah.
Cedar, and Buddington. Buddington must feel like an awful stranger.
Anyway, so he's just trying to get, what's he trying to get? The power of attorney?
Yeah, so in this case, Cedar has been exploiting Martin Simple's like estate, kind of like the whole time. So I got Simple to sign the power of attorney. I can get this idiot to do it. And Deeds actually, like I mentioned, tends to be more formidable than he was expecting. He asks hard questions between bouts of like idiocy, and like basically what we find out is that like they're kind of misappropriating funds. They're like $500,000 in the hole, which is insane in the 30s. And they basically want the power of attorney so they can like funnel more money in, keep their grift going, and they're gonna figure out a way to break Deeds down so they can pull that off. I don't know, like I do enjoy this Cedar in, again, like a lot of characters in this film, in moments. Like when he first goes into Mandrake Falls and he comes back and he's like, I knew I should have taken that trip because like he realizes that like he truly does think that he's the mental superior of Longfellow, and he's trying to exploit that pretty hard. Like I said, we take a lot of journeys with these characters.
Yeah, it's not exactly clear, I guess, just like how villainous John Cedar is. It's not really, like we said, towards the end when he teams up with that other relative.
Right.
Kind of.
Slightly.
But even then, you don't even really see them together too much.
Right.
Like planning and plotting. And it's not until like the very end when we have that trial.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I'm still like, well, like, is he really the villain? Because is it supposed to be the judge at this point? Like, I just wasn't sure. But, you know, I guess he keeps the story moving at the end.
Yeah.
So he's good for that. But he doesn't really have much influence throughout the film. Like, nothing he's really doing is, like, prohibiting Deeds from doing anything he wants. Like, Deeds is still able to do pretty much everything. And he's not the one who, like, exposes Dawson or anything. You know, he just kind of gets lucky with that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think... funny enough, and I think it's a symptom of film from the 30s. The villain in this film, to me, is dames, women. Women ruin everything, folks. And Babe Bennett really, in this film, for whatever reason, falls into the camp of like, she ruined everything. Right? Like, even though Cedar's actively stealing from him, has been trying to exploit him the whole time. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, should we take this money and hand it to this person who has no interest in it? You know, I think other than trying to get him committed, which is definitely like the villain turn for him, arguably it's kind of a push, right? Because Longfellow's already like, I don't really want the money.
Right. Yeah.
But because he has to be involved, like he starts, poking around where they don't want him to. But like you mentioned, he's got the ability to just do whatever he wants. Like Deeds just goes all over the place, and Cedar's constantly like, "Oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that," and he does it anyway. So, man, he's cooking the books, but we don't really see him in a meaningful way until the trial. So, like, is he the villain?
And even at that trial, the only reason it seems like it's going bad is because Deeds kind of given up because of what happened with Babe Bennett. And, if he didn't find out about her, or if that whole thing didn't blow up the way it went, then he would have easily fought against Cedar, and it wouldn't have even been a problem at all. It was only because he had given up because of the evil woman, like you said.
Right, yeah, that I found to be, a bit troubling, but, like, expected from that type of film. It's just... with everything going on, like, there's literally, like I mentioned, there's a guy with a gun. And, like, the big villain until the trial is ultimately Babe Bennett. And it's like, wow. Like, even Winona Ryder being the villain through parts of it isn't, like, at all treated that way in the film. It's a very... I don't know, unexpected isn't the right word, but like it's a weird tone, and it's a little clunky for me.
Yeah, because the whole movie, he's being told by this other character, Cobb, who we'll get to, I'm sure, that stay away from the media. They're just ruining your image. You got to stay away. Don't talk to anybody. So it is Babe Bennett who's getting that information and just totally smearing his character.
Right.
So she really is our villain.
She's our villain. She is our villain. We know she's our villain because the movie or our protagonist cannot overcome the obstacles facing him until the villain effectively admits to her fault in this entire sequence of events. And it's like, it takes her to be like, I really, mucked this up. How could anyone treat a guy as swell as you like this? Like, she really has to kind of like admit her sins for the movie to end, and it's boy, it seems odd because like we literally in the first act have a character that's like, I'm robbing you, and he's not the worst person in the film. Wild.
Yes.
Wild.
Didn't really think about it like that, but Pretty good point.
I mean, I just call him how I see him. I know at this point you're probably checked out. You're like, this movie's too long. And like, yeah. I'm locked in. I'm like, what's going to happen to these two kids? But no, the Cedar in the remake is a lot more influential and a lot more fun. Yeah, Peter Gallagher, his take on Cedar, he's not really a lawyer. He has a significant ownership of Blake Enterprises. Clearly, this company is like a huge media conglomerate because Deeds is in it for $40 billion. It's stock. I guess he has to like raise money to get that $40 billion. It's not really $40 billion. It's just ownership of this big media conglomerate. Mm-hmm. Whatever. I'm getting in the weeds. He's much more clearly the villain. Mm-hmm. He's more or less trying to get over on Deeds, and it's not just for his money. I mean, he literally, which doesn't really make sense to me either, but like he literally wants to like more or less liquidate the company for a big payout.
Right.
And he doesn't care who he hurts to do that. And that definitely puts you in the camp of villain because he's actively trying to, like you said in the synopsis, take people's jobs when he certainly doesn't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little confused about it. His motivations. So he wants to, like you said, liquidate the company, but he still will give Deeds the $40 billion.
Yeah, right. That's confusing, right?
Yeah.
Boy, I work in finance, so this was throwing me off. He's already 51% owner of the company because of the international shareholders.
Okay.
So, like, when Deed sells his shares, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Or did he did he sell it to Cedar, and that's how he gets 51%? It wasn't really clear.
Maybe that's what it was.
Because if he's already the majority shareholder, it doesn't matter.
Okay, that's fair. The problem with that part of the movie is that is confusing. Right?
Yeah, like they didn't really explain that too well.
So, like, it's just weird to me that he could raise the $40 billion to take over ownership of the company. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter, but it is confusing.
It is confusing.
He's a very fun character too. Like, he definitely plays into the comedic aspect of the film from time to time. There's a character we haven't talked about yet who like sneaks up on people and like they have a lot of good interactions. He's very capable and smart, but he's kind of playing like the useful idiot role sometimes when he's talking to Deeds. He's like, "Yeah, you're the chairman." It's hard to really like break him down because like a lot of times where he's funny, it's playing off of a different character.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I was gonna say like he's more of like the straight man, while everybody else is kind of acting a little bit weird, and then just to kind of the way he's reacting to them, like he has an assistant kind of guy that's like hitting on old ladies in the town.
That guy's really funny.
It's like, keep it in your pants.
Like one of the stronger scenes in the movie is it's supposed to emulate that opera scene I keep talking about in the original where Deeds becomes the chairman of the opera board. In the remake, he becomes chairman of the company because he's the majority owner at that point. And, you have this, like, this football player, because he's like, man, the Jets suck. It's like, well, you own them. It's like, oh.
Talking about a joke that still works today.
Yeah, yeah. It does still work.
And the Jets are choke artists.
I wouldn't say that, Mr. Deeds.
Just Deeds. Why is that, though?
You own the Jets, Deeds.
I do? Whoa. That sucks.
Like The Simpsons has that great bit about Homer owning the Denver Broncos. Well, see, that joke doesn't necessarily land the same way versus the Jets, who are just historically terrible. Come at me, internet. But like when the football player comes in and he's like, well, Deeds, he had the most touchdowns last season.
Right.
Like, you're right, he is playing the straight man role. And, again, Deeds punches out that guy. Again, that comedy works because it's like, hey, you keep talking like that in front of these ladies.
Yeah, no cussing in front of the ladies. And then, he apologizes right away, and he's, like, really nice to him. He's not just fighting him and walking out of the room.
Right, like, when he fights someone, it's for a purpose. It's not just to punch him because he doesn't like you. It's like, hey, man, like, I don't have a beef with you, but, like, don't do that. And, that joke, and again, what this movie does well, that joke gets to come back when his father You were cursing him, bro.
He takes his belt off.
Daddy, no. It's fucked up. It's like, oh, this grown man is being abused by his father.
And then Deej is just like, all right, going back to my old other call.
Yeah. But again, like that's Cedar. Yeah, Cedar in this scene. That is interesting. Like, he doesn't have to do much to get the bits because he, like you mentioned, he is a straight man, and he just plays it so well. And the good thing is he's actually implemented in the plot. Like when you're talking about the business, it's not just this like flimsy power of attorney thing. It's like, okay, I'm gonna own the business. This is what I'm gonna do. It's gonna cause these jobs to go away. There is the jobs element in the remake, but it's not directly part of like the company. It is actually because Deeds is planning to do something that is, on paper, it is odd what he's planning to do. So like Cedar, his reaction isn't completely unwarranted in the original. In the remake, it's a little bit more nefarious, but like, I'm still kind of confused though, because like, you could just own part of this media empire. I don't know why you would like bust it up. Like, I feel like you would have better prospects owning a multi-billion-dollar company.
I think so, but for some reason he wants the money now.
I
don't know.
Guess.
Yeah, his role isn't. I think his villain role is more defined at the revealing of Miss Dawson than just Bennett, because he. Wait, so help me retrace some steps here. So he finds out from the guy that gets beat up. Yeah, he finds out from the guy that Adam Sandler beats up that Babe Bennett is actually Pam Dawson.
Mm-hmm.
So then he goes to the head guy, who we'll talk about, played by Jared Harris, and then they scheme together.
Which is a roundabout way to do that, because the one guy works for Jared Harris, but like whatever, it works. Don't think too hard about it, but it works.
Yeah. Ultimately, you needed the two guys to come together somehow.
Yes,
and it's weird that, somebody on the inside already is making them come together. But
whatever.
Don't think about it too hard. It's Mr. Deeds, okay?
Right.
So they team up and ultimately to, just sell out Pam Dawson. And that's the whole point of that, is so that Deeds will sell and just get out.
Yeah.
Because with him out of the picture, then he can liquidate the company. So because you know he's the villain because he's ruining Deed's life right there, and then he can go on with his evil scheme.
Yep. Yeah, he has no regard for Deeds at all. Like, he's willing to throw him under the bus. He's willing to reveal his love interest is not his love interest, even though at this point she is. It's a low blow. It's a villainous move, It's not super mustache twirly, but like it gets the job done. It's like there's some questionable steps to get there, but like the point is like, screw Deeds. I'm gonna do this. Throw him under the bus. I'm gonna bum him out so bad that he's gonna sell his share, and then I'm gonna just steamroll this company with at the shareholders meeting. So flimsy but clean entry into that villainry, and I was like. To your point, I was trying to remember why I thought he was so funny, and I think, like I said before, I think you just nailed it with that straight man part of it. That almost Abbott and Costello thing was like, yeah, he's funny because he's the most normal person in this movie, full of like just outlandish characters, versus the original, which is Deeds is the outlandish character in this otherwise normal group of people. It's two different entry points. It's interesting to make the villain a straight man versus in this remake. It's actually a really probably smart character choice.
Yeah, because most people are able to get along with Deeds because they all have these quirky things in the remake. Yeah. As opposed to the original, where they all just see Deeds as this weird outsider who plays tuba.
Yeah, too much tuba, man. It's just weird. The guy's playing this tuba again.
One thing you might like from Peter Gallagher was maybe the tennis scene. He's just getting his ass kicked. Like, literally.
Is that my point or yours? That's yours.
Ooh, that got you right in the throat, huh? Gotta ask you, though, if it hits you, is it my point or yours? Well, I'm winning then, I guess.
That was a fun scene.
So he's having fun in the movie, but you still know he's the villain.
Yeah. You mostly know because it's like the haircut. He's got good villain. He's got good villain hair. Great character. Big upgrade. Like I said, like Cedar in the original, I mean, like, he's just flustered the whole time. Like, he's just kind of upset about things, but like not in a very funny way. It's like, well, this is improper. Okay, yeah. Peter Gallagher, you get action scenes with the butler who we're going to talk about. You get action scenes with the guy Deeds kicks his ass. Like, you just get to see him play off of so many different characters, and he's consistently funny in those moments. So it's a very strong villain in this case.
Yeah, he's the reason our hero loses his love interest, and he's also makes the sort of hero kind of do these things he didn't want to do, but because he got him to such a low point, he's able to follow through on his evil scheme.
Yeah.
So, competent villain. He's able to get things done.
Totally. From here, like, I'm looking at the notes, and I think you're right. With these notes, that is the framework of the film that you can kind of do one-to-one. After this, when it comes to characters, like, we're going to be all over the place because there are characters that are exclusive to the original. There are characters that are exclusive to the remake. There are events that are exclusive. I will say this, that when I was watching the original again, it had been some time and I really forgot about the original movie. I wonder why. I was kind of like rewatching. I was like kind of upset at the remake for a lot of it because I was like, man, it just hit the same notes, but story wise, but comedically not so much. I will say that one of the funniest people in the original, and I see you have it
I
here,
think hands down the funniest person.
no question, is Lionel Stander as Corny Cobb.
Somewhere in this country, a guy is walking into $20 million.
You know what's funny? Like, they introduced these two kind of like bodyguard characters in the original, but like, to me, he feels like the bodyguard.
Yeah.
You know, he works for Cedar, and whatever. As kind of like, it's almost like a Ray Donovan type character. He's like a fixer almost. Like, he handles things. He beats people up if he needs to. He's kind of an old school tough. He likes Deed's style. Like, he likes the way Deed is a violent man too. You're violent, I'm violent, and they have really good interaction. He's super helpful because if you don't have him in the movie, man, like, I think Deed's just like quits.
Yeah, and he's definitely one of the more interesting characters. Again, he's sort of a reactionary character. Like, absurd things will happen, and then he'll just be like, "Well, what the what the hell?" Like, I think Deeds comes up with a poem, something try to rhyme Cobb with something is out of a job. He's like, "Oh man, I'm fired already." He's like, "This is completely absurd." It's like, "No, all right, it was just a poem."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, okay." And he has the funny beats. Like, I can't remember them all, but he definitely has them. And he's like, somebody was trying to sell bull.
Yeah.
Like, you trying to sell me bull? I've been selling bull my whole life.
No, we're not buying any bulls. What's that? Listen, fella, bull's what I've been selling all my life.
That is one of the funniest jokes in the whole movie.
I think, because I remember some of the beats. Like, I'll say, at the beginning of the film, because they're going a little long with the guy who keeps forgetting he talked to them. And he's the one that's like, all right, Mac, listen, where's Deeds? Tell me where he is. And like, it's actually funny because he doesn't directly ask where Deeds is. He asks where Deeds lives.
Yeah, or his house or something.
Yeah, so they take him to the house and the guy knew Deeds wasn't there. But like, it's good. Like, we need this character because, okay, we did this joke. Let's move forward. He has another funny beat with the guy you were talking about who comes in and is like, I'll settle for $1 million. When Deeds kind of kicks him out, he's like, hey, Mac, the way you got rid of that guy. And they shake hands. He just, like, he ultimately respects Deeds, like, just straightforward nature. There's no, like you said, there's no bull. You're not selling him bull. And, man, like, I can't imagine this movie without.
No, he really makes you care about Deeds because he's, like you said, he's kind of like, well, this is stupid, this little town. Then he has that turn where he kind of like is like his biggest supporter. And without Cobb, really, like, nobody is making me like Deeds.
Right.
Because Deeds isn't making me like Deeds. It's really Cobb. It's all Cobb. I am viewing Deeds through Cobb's eyes, and that's what's making me root for him.
Yeah. Cobb is, because Cobb has credibility because he's coming with the lawyers. So he's already established that he's rough around the edges, but like, again, the credibility still stands because he's not doing anything that's completely out of control.
Right.
He sees a lot more of Deed's actions than anyone else in the movie, and he approves of Deed's actions for the most part throughout the film. Keeps things really grounded in that way. And because we have context between kind of like the Deeds world and the real world through Cobb, we're able to reflect and, like you said, approve of Deeds in the same way. If you do not have that kind of filter of looking at Deeds in that middle ground,
it's tough. It's really tough.
You know, it's like a guy who chases fire engines one moment, he's punching poets another moment. And you know, he's consistently helpful. Like I said, there are like large swaths in the movie where the villain's not in the movie. If you count it as Cedar or Babe Bennett, there are large swaths of the movie. Like there's a huge turn where Deeds decides that he wants to give up his money, and Cobb is helping him with that process. He doesn't recommend it. He's like, yo, dude, I think you're kind of nuts, but you know, you're a stand-up guy for doing it. And again, Cobb is there more than anyone else in the film, and he's a good reference point, especially when Deeds kind of, after love goes south, decides like, I'm done fighting for myself. Just like Santa in Miracle on 34th Street. You know, these dames, they'll make you quit on life. Like, you'll just be like, you know, I'll get committed in a horrific 30s style, like sanitarium, because that girl's mean to me for half a day.
Yeah. Cobb is also very important because he's the reason that Deeds finds out about Dawson.
Yes.
It's really Babe Bennett. He doesn't do it out of malice. He thinks he's the one being fooled by Deeds. He goes, oh, I told you not to do anything stupid, Deeds. You know, I told you to fly right, and then you're going and you're dating this reporter. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, don't you notice the resemblance between your girl and this Babe Bennett? So he totally spills the beans. Yep. Didn't realize he was spilling beans. And then he does sort of like, oh, my bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't know you didn't know. Yeah. I wouldn't have come at you like that.
Yeah, so, totally.
So he's like a genuinely good person, this Cobb. He's like you said, a little rough around the edges, but good person to root for. I like him more than Deeds.
Yeah. I think that is the kind of common thread that like Deeds is at times very rough around the edges, and like Cobb knows how to navigate that space. But like, yeah, he's so kind of conciliatory at the end. He's like, oh my god, if I would have known this is how you were going to react, I wouldn't even have told you, dude. Like, he's truly Deeds' best friend in this film. And yeah, I mean, it's just a great character.
I call him the glue, man.
Yeah.
I don't think the movie works without him.
No. If without him, it's just a sequence of events that are loosely connected.
Yeah.
It still is, but with him, it holds together somewhat.
And talking about, again, just the comedy, he gets some of the funniest moments in the movie. So, really need him.
Oh, corny Cobb. That's one of the original exclusives. I mean, that is the original exclusive.
Yeah. That's the most notable character.
Yes.
Like we said, there's the other relative who doesn't really do anything. He just kind of, I guess I'm related and maybe I should do something. And his wife is like, yeah, you should do something, but we don't really spend any time with him. And we don't really see him except for like one part in like the beginning and then like at the trial.
At the trial, yeah.
Mr. Semple over there is a nose twitcher.
So he does a character of no consequence, really.
No consequence. Almost doesn't even make sense to introduce him, but whatever. It happened. He was in the movie, and we moved on.
Yeah, the only reason I could think he's in there is because like Cedar's like, well, he should be the one to inherit. So that's kind of like his angle. I'm gonna claim this guy's insane Deeds and say that this guy should be the one to really inherit the money. But if you really think about it, if you really wrote it well, maybe you could just say he's insane and just doesn't deserve the money.
Right.
At all. You didn't really need somebody else to get the money. Maybe just say like, well, the company will now take the money because the company will suffer if Deeds has it, but it will flourish if we're able to use the money. So you could have, just written that character out because he really could have been somebody, but was nobody.
Yeah. No, I agree. Just dropped the ball like completely. Yeah. Why is he there? What does he bring to the table? The answer is ultimately nothing. When, to your point, it could have been a lot. You got this like very interesting potential foil, and he's more background than women that are introduced in the trial just because they're from Mandrake Falls.
Yeah.
He's less important than those two characters.
Yes.
And that is hard to do. Hard to do.
Yeah, these last minute thrown in women. Well, we'll get to it when we get to the trial.
Totally.
So let's talk about some of the characters that are pretty exclusive to the remake, at least their portrayals are. We have Jared Harris as Mark McGrath.
Has Longfellow Deeds been locked up? Of course not. While the rest of us obey the law, rich playboys like himself get to laugh at it.
And he is sort of the head of the media, the TV show that Bennett works for, right? He's the host.
Kind of almost like an Access Hollywood type of show.
That's exactly what it is, but they're just all about smearing Longfellow Deeds and just making him look like a dumbass. And, you know, he seems like an okay guy at first because, like, him and Bennett are kind of on the same page, but then the turn really comes when he twists the story of the firefighting, which is, like, you know, how he killed cats and, like, assaulted this woman instead of saving everybody. So you know he becomes a bad guy, and then later he does team up with Cedar to ultimately just destroy, I guess, Deeds.
Longfellow Deeds is the biggest idiot in New York City, and like he's a good character. Like I said, the playful kind of back and forth with Babe Bennett, and then like that sort of dark turn that he takes. I think it played really well into the film, and I don't know. I liked his kind of on-screen persona in the TV production. Clean character.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jared Harris as an actor. I mean, it's rare to see him in a comedic role.
Yes, sir.
Chernobyl, just watched The Crown recently too.
Wow.
He's fantastic in those. You know, he does all right. This comedy here, but he doesn't really have too much to do because they more just focus on him sort of being the villain.
You know, like you had like villain 1A. It's certainly Peter Gallagher,
right?
And Mac is almost like, yes, I'm a villain, but I'm kind of like, you know, he's a tier below.
Yeah.
He's not as directly involved with this Deeds. Sure, it's like, okay, he made him look bad in the press. Like, it doesn't stop Deeds from being a multimillionaire or a billionaire. Peter Gallagher is actively trying to harm Deeds, and Mac is just kind of like, you know, by proxy.
And then I guess we'll talk about him because he also works for the same corporation. Go to Alan Covert as Marty.
I'm a junior producer at Inside Access, and I have information that will help you get Deeds out of town.
We already mentioned him.
Yeah.
He's the one that
he's
actually...
the grandma's boy guy.
He's the grandma's boy guy, yeah. He's the one that knows everything about Deeds and is able to get Bennett in so that she can spy on him. And he's kind of... he's not necessarily a villain. I'd say he's more of like a gray character. He's kind of doing his job. He gets to go undercover a lot and wear lots of funny outfits. He often gets like beat up a lot and just takes a lot of abuse in this movie to comedic effect, of course. And, you know, I think he's attracted to Bennett, and he just like wants to get with her, and ultimately when he kind of sells her out by like twisting her story too, he just gets rejected. So he's ultimately a pathetic character.
Yeah. So kind of actually going back to his relationship with Babe Bennett, Alan Covert is a lot of our introduction to Babe and her lifestyle. We forgot to mention, but she's like sleeping on the couch in her office. She's going through a rough time, and that's why she needs the Deed story. And he's like, well, what's that about? He's like, I bought shoes. Like, it's pretty funny. But like, he clearly likes her because he's like, oh, you could stay with me. And she's like, nah, last time I went over, you were like breathing heavily. He's like, it was asthma.
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't find my thingy.
And like, he's got so many fun beats, but like, as a side character, he's got like those side character funny moments. So like in a comedic film like this, you could, you know, have the guy wearing a neck brace for the rest of the movie because he got beat up in Act 1. Like, that's fun. And he plays that role very strong.
Showering and washing his butt in front of
that was
Cedar.
in costume, like with the mustache coming off. It's just so unnecessary. It's so funny. And yeah, I mean, like, you're right about him being a great character because what sets him over the top is that ultimately, because she likes Longfellow Deeds, she's like, you like that idiot and not me. It spurs him to be like, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna sell you. I'm gonna throw you under the bus. Basically, he's a fun character. You get a lot of value out of this minor character in a way that the original could never.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, going on, and we have Eric Avari as Cecil Anderson.
I'm still very worried about this.
He sort of acts like, sort of like underneath the Cedar character. I'm not exactly sure what his role is, but it seems like he's like his number 2 guy in a way. Like but he's not like Cedar. He's not a villain.
No, he's a pretty nice guy.
He's a much more pleasant individual. He seems to almost like Deeds immediately and just kind of goes along for the ride. And it seems a very pleasant character to be around overall. It has a lot of funny beats.
The equivalent would be, I mean, like, he's in the movie so short in the original, it's almost not worth mentioning. But like, there's a guy who, like, during one of the meetings was like, yeah, but what about the books? You know, like, he's that type of character. He's like a lawyer. He's like, but we have this $500,000 problem, and Cedar's like, screw that. Eric Avari kind of fits in that category of like, hey, why are we doing this to Deeds? And he's just so more affable and fun, like having that, having him, oh, Kitty, nice to meet you, like that.
Or should I say, meow?
It's like this awkward older gentleman that like is very funny, works for the bad guy, but isn't a bad guy. And he's really good at playing off, again, because Peter Gallagher is a straight man. He's really good at playing off Peter Gallagher and kind of being like the moral compass that we're working with while still being adjacent to the villain. And he handles that role very well. And we get to see him with Kitty towards the end of the movie. It's consistent.
He also plays off of Adam Sandler pretty well, too. One of my favorite scenes is when they're in the helicopter and they start singing Space Oddity, David Bowie, and then he just kind of comes out of nowhere. And here am I sitting in a tin can.
Oh, here am I sitting in a tin can.
That's right, Anderson.
It's like, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, but there he is, just like, you know, going along with Deeds. You can tell that he likes Deeds. He's having fun. And then during that tennis match, I think, when he's nailing Cedar a couple times, he's like, you like that, didn't you? Like, I much did.
Oh! You okay? Not a problem. Anderson, you liked that, didn't you?
So he's just a fun character, and you know when he's around, he's going to lighten up the mood a little bit.
Totally. Real, comedic character. Stays above the fray while still being in it. It's like a really, I would say it's probably a pretty difficult turn to like be villain adjacent and not be a villain. And I mean, again, I thought this Space Oddity thing was a little cheesy, but but it was fun. It was fun, and it stuck with the tone of the film, and his contribution to that scene really elevated it, because I think if you don't have him doing that there, you're just like, why are we? Why are we singing the song?
Yeah, his turn and his acceptance of Deeds just makes it easier for the audience to accept.
Yeah,
he's sort of like the Cobb character.
Yeah,
in a way.
In some ways, he is a lot like the Cobb character, and very much like the Cobb character. You're rooting for him. So like again, it's a minor beat, but like when he's with Kitty towards the end, you're like, oh, cool. Like, I'm glad that worked out, you know? Not that it matters. Yeah, but Eric Avari just really, really strong portrayal for how little he's in the movie. But when he is in the movie, you know you're going to get something fun, because he's a very funny guy in all of these scenes.
And I saved the best for last.
Yes, you did.
And we have John Turturro as Emilio Lopez.
Oh, you kind of snuck up on me there.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
Character solely in the remake.
Yes.
I can't even think of anybody like
He's
him.
kind of like the butler in the first one who like wants to put the socks on. Or the
Yeah,
pants.
okay.
But that guy is not funny. I mean, the funniest thing he does in the original is the echo scene.
Yeah.
What? That's an echo, sir. You try it. Me, sir? Yeah.
Which they did in the remake too.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? You want to give it a shot? Boop. Nice.
The same, if not better, effect in the remake.
And they did it a couple of times in the remake, just like the absurdity, just like this echo. But
no, he is in a class of his own, though. You're right about that.
Yeah, John Turturro. I mean, we talked about Cobb being the best part of the original. I think John Turturro might be the best part of this remake.
Honestly, when I think about this movie, when I think about what people quote about this movie, it's him.
It's him.
I'm very
sneaky.
I'm
Very
very
sneaky. I think you're underestimating the sneakiness. He's such a fun character.
Yeah.
You kind of just snuck up on me there, man.
I fear you're underestimating the sneakiness, sir.
It's so crazy, like, because it's an Adam Sandler movie, but like he steals some of these scenes.
Every time he's on the screen, you just go to him immediately. You're like, oh, I can't wait to hear what he's gonna say, because it's just it's such a fun character, and the way he plays it. The feet scene with the frostbite, where he's like, that foot will horrify my dreams forever. It's just such a funny beat there, and then when he actually like hits it and starts jumping on it, and then takes the
fireplace poker.
Yeah, the poker from the fireplace, starts hitting it, and then stabs him, and then Sandler screams. He's like, "Oh my god, what did I do?" He's like, "Oh shit, bastard!" I'm just messing with you. He's like, "Oh, okay, it's cool."
Yeah, that's it. Ow! You're sick! You're sick! Why would you do that to me? I'm just kidding you, pal.
So he's just a fun character. His sneaky thing is so simple, but it works so
every
well.
Time. Yeah, every time. Because like they play like the little music, and he's like behind you.
Yeah.
So good. And in a way that we'll talk about it, I mean, the most consequential side character in the film, like he's like kind of the plot of the movie. You know, so it's fitting that, you know, when we think about this film, we really do think about John Turturro's character, man. Like I do, especially. You know, it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
The mysterious background from España. I don't know. He's just infinitely quotable in these like really weird ways.
It's just a fun character. The sneaky thing, just doing the accent, I'm very, very sneaky, and it's so fun. And yeah, he's essential to the plot because he's pretty much the ending. It revolves around him.
Yeah, the movie exists to tell, weirdly enough, his story. Yeah.
Which I have a little issue with it, but I'll get into it as we discuss those endings.
Sure.
But hands down, my favorite character from the remake.
Yeah, no question. So like, if you're talking about what makes both these movies work, Corny Cobb in the original, like without him, I don't think it works. The movie can work without Turturro, but like he's a delight and probably really the funniest part of the movie.
Like I know a lot of people like the Adam Sandler humor, just like it's not for them. But John Turturro,
I tend to be kind of one of those guys. Yeah.
So John Turturro.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Which is partially why, like when I was talking about Gary Cooper, I was like, you know, because like I'm not really a Sandler slapstick guy all the time.
Right.
Sometimes I am. He's very funny, like, but you know, it's not always for me.
Yeah, I get that. Especially like towards kind of this time of his career, because you guys just kept playing the same guy in like every movie, and he was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, no, totally. But he's a great actor. I mean, Uncut Gems was fun. Even like that, it's cheesy, but like that murder mystery movie like works. It's Sandler comedy, but like, you know, they pull it off. Those are different movies than the ones we're talking about.
All right. Is there any other character you wanted to talk about?
No, how could we? How could we? I think anyone that needed to be discussed, I think we nailed pretty handily.
All right, so let's just get to these endings because they are very different. I think we should start with that original.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a long ending.
Yeah.
And it's a very different ending. So I'm going to start when Babe is revealed. I'll start there. So Mary Dawson's not Dawson. Deeds finds out that it's really Babe Bennett. So he's just completely crushed because he really loved this girl. So he doesn't really care anymore about life, and then you just see him mopey pretty much the rest of the movie.
Right.
And this is around the time where he's in his mansion, and then there's a guy with a gun comes in.
So I hate to jump in here, but like this part of the film comes out of nowhere, and then for some reason becomes the theme of the film.
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of on this like somewhat comedic ride with this character who happened upon all these millions of dollars, and I guess it's playing off like the Depression era in the United States, and like there's a lot of hungry people, like Hoovervilles, that type of stuff. And this guy comes in, he's like, I'm a farmer, I'm broke, my family, there's no food, I got nothing. And rich guys like you, which got rich like 5 days ago, rich guys like you, I guess you do think I'm a moocher, blah, blah. And Gary Cooper's like, oh, I mean, shit, you need money. So now Gary Cooper's kind of like doing that thing where he's moping at the table, he's touching his face, and he's like, you know what, yeah, you make a good point. I'm going to give away my millions. And he comes up with this kind of like intricate plan to give a bunch of farmers farmland, like cattle and stuff like that. And he's like, he basically creates like a soup line, but it's with a job. And it gets bogged down. Like, we spend a lot of time in this line talking about the logistics of it, how many people he's signed off on, how many more people he needs to. People get introduced at a time. Like, some guy just walks up and is like, Thieves, we really, me and the guys, like, I just gotta tell you, you're a real swell guy. And then there's another guy who's like German and gives him a sandwich. And like, I know it sounds like I'm spouting nonsense, but we are at the nonsense part of this film. And there's thousands of men in his mansion asking for a handout because the government has failed them. Kind of similar to something recently in this country. And it's like, I get it, right? Like, here's this rich guy, he's got $20 million, but like, I start to kind of pull back from the movie in this case because it's like, no, you're right. But it's like, this isn't your problem, Deez. Like, I appreciate that he's trying to do this, but like, it's too complicated and weird, and like, I almost actually do kind of come back along with the lawyers in this scenario, which is like, what are you doing? Like, there's no way for you to effectively do this. And I'm going to stop talking about it because it bogs down the movie so much. It's 100% unnecessary. And it's really just filler scenes. And this, where you talk about that, like, lecturing and preachy shit, it gets all preachy here, taking us into a pretty, like, again, comedic, not that serious trial. Like, no serious person would look at the trial and be like, oh, this is what would happen in a trial. Like, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, and ultimately it doesn't really matter, too. Because he's getting all these farmers money, so all the farmers are on his side when he's at this trial, but like, their support for him doesn't help him necessarily win.
No, not even a little bit.
So there's no consequence of, like, we needed to show him giving out this money to these farmers. You just need to, like, let people know maybe, okay, I'm going to give the money away. You could have done that in, like, 1 second.
I know.
We spent so much time with all these farmers. Like you said, the sandwich. I forgot about the sandwich.
The sandwich. Because he's got one, he's got one.
Yeah.
He eats the meal with the guy who tries to shoot him.
Yeah.
I think that, kind of Silent Times is a commentary about what was going on economically in the country. So this sort of allegory about this regular smuts or whatever the hell they would say at that time, who inherits all his money. And he's such a good guy that he wants to give it away. We always kind of talk about eat the rich in this country now, like as if in this case, he's effectively a billionaire, right? One billionaire giving up his riches is going to change all society. It's like, no, it'll make things better for somewhat small population, in this case farmers. Again, not downplaying farmers and what they do, but it's like, you're not solving the problem by handing these people farmland. Like, people had farmland and it failed. Right? So it's like, I get it. It's like utopian vision where, like, if nice people, these rich guys have so much and we have so little. It's like, yeah, that's true. Like, going to the opera while people starve is a problem, but like, it's just like, they're trying to do too much with this one character. And it's like, no, this doesn't solve it. And it's like putting a brake on the movie. It just slows everything down.
It really is just shoehorned in and introduced
completely,
like, out of nowhere. The way they should have done it is maybe like when he gets to New York, maybe he sees some of these people living in poverty.
Yes.
And then from time to time, he maybe even like learns like who some of them are, and then maybe one of them just like dies because they just had no money, and then maybe there's like a turn, like, oh wait, I should have been doing this the whole time. So there's a way they could have done it if they introduced it earlier where it would have mattered, but since it is like just like, here you go, now he's gonna give money to farmers, you're just like, what?
Yeah. See, but like the remake does the same thing, right? Like in a very short amount of time. Right. So like, you got the one scene where he's like, oh, got a couple over there, they don't need it, but like, give them $20,000. And you see him like dancing on the table, like, that shit's funny, right? And then at the end, well, we'll talk, but like where he gives his money is funny.
Yeah.
So like it serves a purpose. In this scene, like it clearly the director, the writer, something like that, has a beef with the way the government handled the Great Depression. Rightfully so, buddy. But like, I don't know, having Longfellow Deeds be like the savior of the common man doesn't fit because ultimately he doesn't even do that either.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a big ass aside because someone had a gear to grind about poverty in the country, and it didn't fit well in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, moving forward to
the trial. So Deeds gets committed, or he gets does he get arrested? Yeah, I think he gets arrested.
He gets he gets arrested for basically for being committed. Like he's accused of being kind of like legally insane, so he's arrested for that.
Then he's just going to be put on trial.
Yes.
Okay, so he's going to be put on trial. Doesn't matter how he gets there.
Nope.
He's in jail. He has to go on trial pretty much to plead his sanity, because the whole thing is Cedars teamed up with that no-name relative, and now we're going to prove that he's insane, so we get his money, and then he goes away forever.
Yeah.
Problem solved. And then the whole thing with Deeds is, well, he's been sad since he found out about Dawson.
Super sad.
So he doesn't even want representation. He's not preparing for this trial. He's just moping in his cell, not doing anything.
Yeah. So it's like the guy that was his lawyer is now prosecuting him, basically. And again, this is a real grindy, we got to get through this part of the film. Because you not have to sit here and watch Gary Cooper not defend himself for a long time. Like the chips just keep getting stacked and stacked and stacked. And the whole time Gary Cooper's just like, I guess I'm going to get committed.
And the whole thing is they're describing events that had already happened in the movie or that were already talked about.
We're recapping the movie.
We're recapping the whole movie while watching Gary Cooper just being mopey. It is definitely the slowest part of the film. It was brutal.
I'm thinking about it. Oh, boy. Yeah. And like I said, at this point, I'm still personally kind of like on board with Gary Cooper. I can forgive the sandwich scene, you know what I mean? But, like, I kind of like Gary Cooper at this point, right? Like, because Cobby and everything like that, like, you know, he's a decent guy as portrayed. So, like, I'm sitting here watching the guy kind of like just getting pulled through the ringer with no pushback. I'm assuming because of the movie, at some point, the turn's going to come.
Right.
But boy, does that take a long time.
It takes a long time. We get to spend time with those old ladies that you referred to from Mandrake Falls, who just...
There are two women who are kind of like, they're kind of like doddering old ladies. We don't really know that till the end of the trial. But like, they're character witnesses. And they say like, what do you know about Longfellow? He's like, he's a strange boy. He does all this stuff. And he's pixelated. Pixelated.
He's pixelated. And then, if you're not sure, because when you think pixelated, you think, oh, you can see the pixels on something because you don't have, your thing is buffering. No, they go to define what pixelated means in fine detail.
The term was old at the time. It's 1936. I'm like, what the hell is pixelated? Well, back in the 1890s, people would say pixel. The Pixies got him. And, you know, like...
We just say this word now. It's like, oh, wow, we just sat through, like, this long definition of this word. Oh,
it's crazy, because you got these two. So, first you get Babe Bennett, right, who's, like, realized I fucked up, right? That's Babe Bennett's character. She starts to say something, and the judge is like, women talking at the trial, I don't know. This woman's clearly, I don't know, this woman's clearly emotional. Get her out of here. Maybe if you can come back and behave like a man would, we'll let you talk. So she gets sidelined, and this trial becomes the pixelated women, and it's just shots of Gary Cooper like this, shots of Cedar being like, oh, yeah, got another one, shots of the judge being like, wrong. And it's just like one person after another who was already in the film, the waiter at the restaurant when he punched the guys, he was like, yeah, then he punched the guys. Like, yeah, I know, we saw that. The horse thing, they keep talking about the horse donuts, apparently it's a big deal. And the guy was like, yeah, he fed the horse donuts. That sucked. Okay, now we got to listen to this guy. He was playing the tuba. I got to hear about the tuba again. And it's just a series of people saying he's nuts, and then the lawyer being like, I'm winning the trial.
The funny thing, I gotta say though, they bring up a lot of good points. Like, okay, so he's running naked through the streets.
Mm-hmm, yep.
They're being very violent with other people, physically assaulting people. You know, feeding donuts these food. You don't know what it's gonna do to the body of the horse. I mean, he is like a menace to society. And I'm like, yeah, maybe he should be locked away. They're bringing up some really good points.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very convincing prosecution. Like, even again, a person who's like on Team Cooper is like, yeah, I don't know, that's a pretty rough look. And like you're sitting there, it's like, because again, like I said, the chips keep stacking. Like, yeah, dude, like, hey, Coop, you're not winning, and I don't know how it's gonna end for you.
Yeah. They even go into like this like psycho length detail about what manic depressive is. Dude. They have a chart and everything. And see, usually you're here.
It's worse than Psycho.
And then you go down here, and then he might be here, but then he goes up here. It's like it was insane how long they took to describe that.
As long as it takes him to talk about like dual personalities in the end of Psycho, it's worse. He gets up, he starts talking, and then he's like, can I bring up a chart? And I'm like, yeah, you can bring up a chart. And he's like, oh, we're not done? There's more? And when he's down here, he's real angry and he's violent. It's like, yeah, I've seen that. That tracks. And he's up here, he's super euphoric. It's like the fire truck. It's like, no, this all makes sense. Like, Deej is manic depressive.
Lock this fucker up.
And like, all of this keeps happening. All these people keep going up, and they're like, Deej sucks. And Corny Cobb is over there. He's like, come on. And Babe Bennett's like, come on. And, you know, the judge is literally about to, like, render a verdict. He's, like, in the middle of the verdict, which is like, you're crazy. We're sending you to, the nut house. And Babe Bennett's like, oh, well, you said I could talk. I want to get my moment to talk. Come on. I got to talk about Longfellow. So she goes up, and she's basically like, yes, it's my fault. I ruined the movie. I made everything bad. I am the worst person. I'm lower than dirt. And everyone's like, yep, we can all agree that you are the worst person. And then she's like, but I love you, Deeds. And then Cooper, he gets a little spark in his eyes. He's like, oh, okay. She loves me. So then he's like, Your Honor, I will now defend myself. And let me tell you something. It's not that convincing.
It's not that convincing, but he's got the whole courtroom laughing their asses off. So they're all on Deed's side for like saying the stupidest things. Like, oh, you know what? That guy's he's a doodler. Let's check out his doodle. Look at that. I don't know what that is. Is that Picasso or something?
The judge, you're an O filler. Yeah, he fills in all his O's.
The judge here is an O filler. A what? An O filler. You fill in all the spaces in the O's with your pencil. I was watching you.
They're cracking up at this. Like, oh my God, he fills up his O's! Oh!
It's like, yeah, he basically puts everyone else on trial. He's like, that guy's a nose twitcher, she's a ear puller, and it's like all this stuff. And it's like, so, you know, when I play the tuba, which I still don't think is that odd, it's just how I like to think. It's like, is that really why people do those things? To think? Or are they just like, you know, like not thinking? They're just kind of like...
I don't play the tuba, maybe.
Yeah. So he does that, and like the most convincing argument really is the prosecution's star witness, the two women, are bad witnesses because they're like, who else is pixelated? Well, everyone's pixelated. The judge is pixelated, and Deeds is like, first of all, who pays for your house? Oh, you do, Deeds. It's like, yeah. And who takes care of all your bills? It's like, you do, Deeds. It's like, all right. Long story short, they're not good witnesses. Deeds puts up this decent enough defense. People in the courtroom are like, yeah, he helped me out. He gave me farmland. He's a swell guy. And, you know, he rips on the doctor. He's like, the doctor sucks too, the doodler, right? And he goes through all this song and dance. And he's like, so, you know, I may seem strange to you, but you might seem strange to me. Case closed. Oh, yeah, and also, that lawyer, pow!
There's just one more thing I'd like to get off my chest before I finish. Proceed.
And the judge was like, order in the court. And, like, it comes back. Like, they don't even follow up on that scene, right? He punches the lawyer, fade the black, come back, and the judge is like, well, you're the most sane man I've ever seen.
Yeah. Can we address that the witness just assaulted the prosecutor? I mean, what are we doing here?
You know, it's like, I think that we at least have a mistrial. do all this groundwork for the movie to just kind of end it there. It kind of like fades to black again, and like he's running around. It looks all disheveled. I guess people like he's such a good guy. People will like want to rip at his clothing,
like he's a beetle or something. I don't know.
I don't know. The courtroom. He comes back in the courtroom. The gate to the court or whatever is locked. It's him and Babe Bennett. They like kiss, and then everyone's like outside, like World War Z, like Deeds. And that's the end of the movie. Longfellow Deeds defends himself. Him and Babe Bennett kind of resolve their thing, and for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, and they play that with the tuba. The tuba plays again, and no one can deny, right? After 2 hours, you can't deny it. I can't deny. Longfellow Deeds is, in fact, he's a good fellow. He's a Longfellow. He's also a good fellow. That was how that movie ended.
Yeah, that's an ending, all right.
You know, I didn't remember that I'd seen the movie before until I got to the trial. When the women said pixelated, I was like, oh, I saw all this once. All of this I've seen before, and I forgot until this trial. And like, you know, we've seen movies with trial MacGuffins. Miracle on 34th Street is clearly in that category of like,
yeah, why are we here?
Okay, I can see this being the defense. Whatever. Long story short, it happened. Not a great trial MacGuffin. Like, really shoehorned in. That whole back half of this movie feels really shoehorned. It's I don't know. Like, if you're going to talk about the Great Depression, maybe you lead with that. Because, like, if the movie's about that,
right,
maybe we talk about that.
Yeah, that's what I said. Bring up, when he goes to New York, he should see the people living in poverty. Be like, well, what happened here? Well,
yeah, 10 cities, you know? Yeah. Like, you got all these rich people living high on the hog, and you got all these poor people not. And they bring the poor people in, like, well, after he's lived this, like, rich and lavish life. It's really strange.
That's the ending of the original. Let's pivot and talk about the ending of that remake.
Nice.
All right, so I'll start again at the same part where Babe is revealed. He's going to propose to her. I think it's at Madison Square Garden.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's going to propose, but then the show that she works for reveals that she really is not Pam Dawson. She was really Babe Bennett.
Babe Bennett.
And, you know, Adam Sandler's crushed. She arrives, but it's too late. She wanted to defend herself. He's like, no, fuck this shit. I'm out of here. So then he decides he's going to go back home to Mandrake Falls. Before then, though, he's going to donate money to any charity of your choice. And he goes,
United Negro College Foundation?
I thought it was just the United Negro Fund or something.
Something like that, yeah. Which, like, yeah, I guess it's funny. Like, the reaction shot is really funny.
Yeah, because, like, he was just like, well, he throws out, like, he's like, just donate to some charity, and then, what's his face? Eric Avari Cecil. Yeah, he's just like, the United Negro Fund? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And then you see the guy open up a check for $40 billion, just like, what the fuck?
He does that, like, comedic, like, he falls in his chair, like, just backwards. I will say this, it's a fun beat. It does confuse me, because, like, I guess they weren't his shares to sell. Like, what happens then?
Yeah, exactly.
You just let that shit go. Like, it's the type of movie where it's like, why are you thinking about this? Just like,
yeah,
it was funny when the guy fell. Like, move on. You know?
Exactly, because it's like, he sells his shares, so he goes back to Mandrake Falls. While he's there, he learns that Cedar is going to still liquidate the company. I think that was part of his leaving. It's like, just don't sell the company, just make sure these people still have jobs. But he is going to sell it, so he's like, fuck. And while he's in Mandrake Falls, Bennett goes to visit him, trying to get some, you know, just closure, just like try to apologize to Deeds. This is when she falls through the ice, and he has to save her with his frostbitten foot.
Yes.
You know, the only thing that could save her, because the foot won't also feel the pain from the ice. You gotta think about that too. But it's also the only way he can pull her up. So he pulls her up. He still thinks like, I don't know who you are. I still think you're fake. So that was an interesting choice, not to have them kind of reconcile things there.
I thought that was good.
Yeah. Drag it out a little bit longer. So then he does go to this meeting, I guess, where Cedar's there with all the shareholders. He's about to officially liquidate the company. But there's this law or something that says anybody who owns any stock or any share gets to at least say something before everything is sold. And here comes Deeds. He's back. He's like, what are you doing here, Deeds? You sold all your shares. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I bought one share, so I'm allowed to talk because you said that thing before, and now I'm here. So he goes up, he gives this rousing speech, kind of like like the original film. Just the speech is supposed to turn everything around, and it does. Everybody in the room is like, you know what? He's right. I don't want all this money. I don't need all this money. Let's not sell.
It's a really, for a kind of cheesy scene, it's a really good speech in the sense that, like, it plays in that, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to, and I forgot what the one guy.
Yeah.
He was like, but he sold porn now. Like, that guy was weird. But, like, it actually was, like, for the film, it actually was kind of a rousing, good speech. And it let us know who this Deeds was. Like, yes, I'm childlike, but it's because I didn't give up on my dreams. I'm doing the things I want. And, like, it put his character in a context in a clean way before the turn.
Before the turn, yeah. So everybody's on Deeds' side, and then, Cedar's like, well, it doesn't matter, Deeds. I have 51% of the shares, plus the international stock, so I'm going to vote, yeah, we're going through with this. So he's about to hit that gavel and make everything official. Then, wait! Babe Bennett crashes the party. She has this diary that Deeds discovered earlier. He's been kind of reading the whole movie, because they established something earlier, and now we're bringing it back.
Yes.
And then she's reading a passage about a certain night, a certain very erotic night between I keep forgetting
Sheldon Blake.
Between Sheldon Blake and a certain maid, and he's just talking about how, should I make my move now? I just need a sign. And then she just gives him a look, and then, all right, I guess we're banging.
Dude,
so the two of them bang. She dies 9 months later, giving birth to a baby, and then you have John Turturro's
Emilio.
Yeah, you have John Turturro's Emilio just going, oh, that is my mother's name. And then baby was born this day. Oh, that is my birthday.
That is my mom.
That is my birthday.
To a Miss Consuela Lopez.
That is my mother.
And the rightful heir to $40 billion.
That is my money?
Oh, man, he's so good.
Yeah, he's so
That's part of the movie.
And then, so it's revealed that the true heir is not Deeds, but it's Emilio.
Mm-hmm.
Which just brings up questions, well, if you knew that was your son, or maybe he didn't know he had this son. Yeah, that's where it's like, well, why'd you hire him?
Flimsy, but like...
Yeah, don't think about it too much, I guess.
It's a means to the end. It's a means to the end, for sure.
So what this means is Deeds never had any shares to sell to Cedar, so all the money is Emilio's, and immediately he just fires Cedar right there. And since Deeds is so cool, you know what? He gets a cool $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
Right? Just for being a good guy.
Yep. It's like, hey, Deeds, you need me? No, I'm good. It's like, how about $1 billion? Sure, I'll take it. Great. I like it. It's funny,
Yeah. So then, like, we go back to Mandrake Falls. We see Deeds there. He's there with Bennett. They're together now. He's back at that pizza place. And the only difference is now everybody has, like, a rich, or this expensive Ferrari.
Yeah, including Steve Buscemi's crazy house.
Right. And who can't drive.
I wonder why we didn't talk about Crazy House.
It's kind of a typical Steve Buscemi and an Adam Sandler cameo. Just this weird one-off character that's just... weird. And then, Steve Buscemi already has some crazy eyes.
Yeah.
Make him go cross-eyed. Yeah, it's like, okay, I guess we're going here.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, completely unnecessary character, has some funny lines from time to time, but, like, definitely, if you're talking about, like, the movie kind of being, like, dated in any sense, like, that feels like part of it. It's like, what's this for?
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, not everything translates well. The Jets joke still works.
The Jets joke was still very strong.
I'll take that. So ultimately, we got our happy ending in the remake.
Yeah.
Again, if you think about it too much, it does get a little bit muddy. But because they set up that tone pretty early that you're not supposed to take this seriously, you don't really ask yourself questions unless you really are analyzing it, which you probably won't be analyzing.
Don't. Because, like I said, with Emilio's character, it's like, I guess, if I had to ascribe a meaning, it's like, oh, well, he can't, like, let people know he was sleeping with the maid, and maybe that's why he kept him around. And
maybe. Because he did say, like, he was always very kind to him. Yeah. So did he know? Did he not know? We're never really told that.
Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe less is more. Maybe if we did know, we wouldn't like it.
Yeah. And then, like, does the check to the United Negro Fund, does that bounce? Like, like, I'm concerned about that, but whatever. But, like, there are moments that are meant to just play to comedic effect that you don't think about. And I think that this end of the movie is along those same lines. Like, if we're being super serious about, like, a shareholders meeting and, like, who owns shares and all that stuff, like, is this likely the outcome? Absolutely not. But, like, this works for the film. It was good ending for what they did with the film. Like, pretty good ending with this framework.
Yeah, because like Adam Sandler gets the girl, which is ultimately what he wanted. Plus, he gets a little bit of that cash too.
Yeah,
He doesn't need all of it. He just gets enough, and he spreads the wealth. You know?
And we don't have to go to trial. I mean, like if they had made some sort of trial element, it wouldn't have been. I don't think it would have worked. It just would have been shoehorned in, like the trial. So I'm glad that we got that same effect in a shareholders meeting.
Yeah, I mean, good cut.
Yeah.
Good cut. The remake is 20 minutes shorter.
Yes.
It's good. it's a good length. I have no complaints about making the movie shorter.
Yeah, no. And it's like we mentioned, like characters like Crazy Eyes and stuff like that. You could probably even shave off another 10 minutes and be fine. But like with what we got, it was a perfectly fine runtime. Everything that was in there was certainly okay to be in the movie.
Yeah, you got also Rob Schneider's character from Big Daddy, the Hip Hop Anonymous guy. He just makes a couple cameos there. So, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
I could just talk a little bit about the music.
I was going to say, we usually talk music.
I do like the Tom Petty song. You Don't Know How It Feels. It feels like Adam Sandler's little theme. Just hearing that harmonica going. That's fun. And I enjoyed the Space Oddity part. That part I know it's cheesy, but...
It was fun, though. I did enjoy it.
That was fun. So,
like, little much of the pilots turning around and stuff. Like, it was fun. It was fun. I mean, the original, there's not... I mean, the music is, like, Swanee Lake, He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Real, like...
tuba.
Yeah. Anything... like a band might play with a tuba, they have in the film from time to time. But like the remake has more modern songs, like you said. Tom Petty works well.
Well, I mean, it's the 30s, right? So like, can you even name any like pop songs like that from then that like weren't like He's a Jolly Good Fellow?
You'd probably listen to some kind of like jazz type thing, maybe.
I don't even know music from the 30s.
No, me either. So. Yeah,
very limited.
But I think that how they chose their song selection in remake was solid, actually. Like, you can get the rights to any song, like using them effectively. Like that, like you mentioned with the Tom Petty, seeing Mandrake Falls with that harmonica, seeing that kind of like small town life, as it were, like it fit very, very well. So, yeah, solid music choices.
All right, I think we're at that point. We don't want to make this longer than
the original movie.
So here we go. Reggie, should the remake, Mr. Deeds, exist?
So, it's funny, like, this may be controversial. When I was watching the original, again, I was sitting there and I was actually kind of mad at the remake, which at this point I hadn't watched, right? Because I was like, oh man, they just did all the same stuff, right? Sure, the original does a lot of the same stuff longer. But then, like, once you get to, like, the end of the original, I'm like, man, that really doesn't work, right? Like, it's kind of shoehorned in. It doesn't feel very strong. I fluctuate because I like Gary Cooper's performance at times, and I hate it at other times. So I'm talking a lot about the original because where it fails as a film is that thematically it doesn't stay consistent. For the time, though, I mean, like, we're grading on a curve because it's 1930.
Right, of course.
The remake, I'm not really always a big, like I mentioned, Adam Sandler slapstick guy. Like the Crazy Eyes things, I could leave it. There's other elements, even like the foot thing. It's like, it still holds up and it's kind of funny, but like, it's like, all right. Like I did like some of the seriousness of the original film, and I think that was completely lost in the remake. But that was a choice,
right?
And it was ultimately the right choice because you're not going to see an Adam Sandler movie, at least at the time, to see him play a serious, character. He took the Longfellow Deeds character, leaned into the comedy, made that comedy work even more than it did in the original film. All of the character actors that show up are really good. The Avery character is really good. Winona Ryder's pretty damn good in this movie. Grandma's Boy guy is funny when he's in the film. So like all these choices made these characters shine, made this flimsy plot work. So yeah, the remake should certainly exist because they made a purely comedic take on Mr. Deeds. If you don't want to see a purely comedic take on Mr. Deeds, go watch the original. it for the most part still like it's a watchable movie. It's a little long. The trial is odd, but overall, like I think Cooper is still fairly good in the movie and it's worth watching. But like the remake is probably more along the lines of what a general audience should watch if they want to deal with Mr. Deeds as a character. They nailed the tone. They modernized it in a clean way, and it's a funny movie. Even when there are moments where like I wouldn't traditionally think are funny, I was like, that's funny. Can't hate. And remake should certainly exist. And it's actually in a weird way some of Adam Sandler's best work. Weirdly enough, like I'm serious about that because he really does nail a tone throughout the film.
Yeah, when I was watching the remake, I did encounter that problem that you had too, that like, wow, this is pretty much 1-to-1 what we're doing here. It did sort of change course. It didn't stay on that path, ultimately. And it, like I said before, the original is more of a serious movie with some comedic elements thrown in, while the remake is just a straight-up comedy. So it was able to find its own footing in that sense. And, Adam Sandler movies, I'm in the same boat, like, take him or leave him. Sometimes more the latter. But I think the performances are just really enjoyable in this one. And John Turturro, like, just revisiting that character, Emilio, he's such a fun character. It's just as fun as the first time I saw him in theaters. And it's a character that aged really well, and it's such a fun character to just still quote to this day. So it really put it over the top for me. Like, I was really on the fence because I did not like the original movie at all.
Sure.
And I'm like, no, we don't need a remake of this because the first one was horrible. But I really did enjoy the performances, and they updated it, like you said, they modernized it, and it is funny. I was laughing, especially at John Turturro. So it just made it, but I do think this remake should exist.
Yeah, I would say it's on that. It's on the fence, but it clears it with the strong characters. It's not the story that clears it; it's the ensemble that they put together. I think if you have someone that's not Winona Ryder, I think the film struggles. If you have someone that's not John Turturro, I think the film struggles. I don't hate the original as much as you do, but I certainly know where you're coming from. I have a soft spot for probably just Cooper's portrayal to an extent. So I think that's what does it for me. But yeah, no, the remake is it's better.
If I had to suggest which one should I watch, only the remake. You don't need to watch the original.
Yeah. The original you watch for like film study, if you want to. But yeah, no, I mean, I think you nailed it. It's like, but like you said, it is right there.
Yeah, it's close.
I think runtime helps because I think if you add like an extra 10 minutes to this movie, we're probably not saying the same thing.
Yeah, I was definitely elated when I saw the shorter runtime by 20 minutes. I was like, yes, I can get on board with that.
And I think what really helps the movie too, we didn't get a huge chance to talk about it, but like Winchester, Tinville, like that sequence is actually really, that is some of the funniest stuff in the movie.
Yeah, she just commits to her lie, Winona Ryder. She's really funny in that whole sequence.
Small hump. No, she a damn beach ball.
Right? I'm sensitive about it. I don't want to talk about it. Sure.
Oh, man.
You heard her? You got to go to Dr. Pepper. We should go.
Yeah, and the literary references were... were good.
Okay, bye, Miss Finch and Atticus.
So good. So, yeah. That was that.
Yeah, Mr. Deeds. What'd you guys think? Did you agree with this? Did you disagree with us? Did you like one movie more than the other? Are we totally insane? Am I insane for not liking the original? Because I did not like that movie at all. Let us know in the comments. Reggie, what movies are we watching next time?
I was looking through like a list of remake films, and we just went kind of very comedic here, so maybe we should go a little bit darker. I'm thinking about Old Boy.
Definitely darker.
Yeah.
All right, so we got the original one, which is it Korean?
I think that's a Korean film.
Yep, it is a Korean film. And then we got the remake, which has Thanos and Scarlet Witch.
Wow.
Interesting pairing.
Yeah, totally. So, I just think that's something, I don't know, what genre is that? Is that
It's like
thriller?
It's kind of a thriller.
Drama, maybe?
Yeah, not a thriller.
Thriller, yeah. I'm sure we've got ideas and feelings about the films, but I guess you'll hear about that next time.
That's right. Well, thanks for watching with us. If you're on YouTube, feel free to let us know what you thought. Let us know any suggestions for future episodes. If you're on iTunes, any 5-star ratings or good reviews would definitely help the channel grow.
Yeah. As always, really appreciate you guys following the stuff. We're on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Been getting really good feedback. Reading some of the comments on YouTube has been fun and responding to people, and I'm just glad people are enjoying it. Getting a lot of, like I mentioned, good feedback. So we're gonna keep them coming.
I'm Dan Bulick.
I'm Reggie Parker,
and this has been another episode of Retro vs. Remake.